Hey, this is Dr. Barnett. Mrs. Ortiz and I met with almost all of our students on Thursday, August 24th and Friday, August 25th during their PE classes. But we're recording this just in case there's some students who were absent or maybe are in ISPE. So we spent about 25 minutes with students going over some mandatory information that we're legally required to communicate, but we also want to set the tone for this to be a great year for everybody. So we talked to students about how everyone on our campus, staff and students alike, deserve to have a safe place to learn and enjoy time together. I talked to students about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Of course, school is all about being ready to learn and academic achievement, but we know that certain things have to be in place for students to be ready to learn. For example, at the base of this pyramid, if students are hungry or they haven't slept well, their brains are not going to be ready to learn. If students do not feel emotionally or physically safe at school, they're not going to be able to learn well, and that's what this presentation is primarily about. And also, if students don't feel a connection for students and staff members, a sense of belonging and being welcome to be whoever they are, then they are not going to be ready to learn. And so that's why we need to talk about safety on campus. I talked to students about when school rules apply. Of course, they apply when they're at school, but they also apply on the way to and from school. And I gave some examples. For example, I know many of our students were going, or maybe are at right now, the LCC versus Del Norte High School football game tonight, which is on La Costa Canyon High School's campus. Our school rules apply at any school-related activity. So if students were caught, say, fighting or vaping at a school-related, event, school rules would apply and they could be subject to Degeno disciplinary action. Also, I talked to students about, say, for example, they were riding their bike home from school and they stopped by 7-Eleven and they saw someone who shoplifted something or, again, was vaping at the 7-Eleven. In addition to possibly being in trouble with law enforcement, they could also be subject to being suspended. So I just wanted them to be aware that school rules apply not just at school but in other circumstances. Also, the last bullet there talks about social media. Pardon me. And I told our students that I absolutely do not want to see, nor do I go in looking at their Instagram or their Snapchat or their text messages, although I encourage parents to have a rule in your house where if a student has a phone, you are monitoring those accounts and those communications, and be aware that many students also have a private account that they may or may not be telling you about. So you want to be sure that you're investigating that as well. But what I shared with them is sometimes parents bring to us, to Ms. Ortiz and myself, our new assistant principal, screenshots from social media where students are maybe bullying someone, using very unkind language, threatening someone, saying that I'm gonna, find you after school and do whatever, and that in those circumstances, if something that's being posted on social media is impacting a student's learning or sense of safety on our campus, it does become our business. And so, bottom line, just be kind everywhere. That was kind of the message that we relayed. Parking lot safety and bike safety. We certainly do not want anyone to not have the privilege of riding their bike to school. We know that that is a great convenience for families, but we also want our kids to understand how incredibly dangerous these machines can be. So we are very, 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 very strict about students having their helmets buckled and hopefully buckled securely under their chin. It's become a trend for kids to buckle their helmet on top of their helmet, which does absolutely no good at all. That helmet's going to fly off. and any kind of an impact. So we really, really monitor that. We did have a student just today who got a ticket from a San Diego sheriff who was out on Village Parkway, I think, and the student didn't have a helmet on, and that student received a citation. Um, Also talked to students about they need to walk their bikes on campus, that they need to park in the racks. We have about 150 bikes a day that are coming to campus. Last year it was about 200. I imagine it will increase throughout the year. Um, and again, we want students to be able to ride their bikes, but they need to do so safely. And I communicated to them that it's a privilege and not a right. And so if they are not following our bike safety regulations, if they're popping wheelies as they fly off campus, if they're weaving in and out of traffic, things like that, they could very well lose the privilege of being able to ride their bike to school. I praised your students for being on time and thank you for getting them to school early. We have had very few tardies this year. I hope it continues. We did let them know that starting next week, they're going to need to be all the way into their first period of the day classroom when the bell rings. We've been a little bit lenient this first couple of weeks, telling them just run, 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 run. But now we're going to start turning them around and sending them back to attendance office to get a tardy slip because we want them to leave a few minutes earlier from home and get there on time so they can learn and so it's not disruptive to the learning environment for other people. I let your students know that if they earn 3 or more tardies in a month, and this is going to be starting next month, that they will earn a lunch detention. And if they earn 7 or more tardies in a month, they will have to attend a 2-hour Friday night school. It's really Friday afternoon school, but that it's better just to be on time. We also talked about a wave for the day, our cell phone policy. Kids can absolutely have their cell phones on campus. We understand that you want to be able to be in contact with them should an emergency occur, and that they might need to communicate with you in the course of the day. However, their phones must be in their backpack, not in their back pocket, and certainly not out from bell to bell. Never, ever, ever do we want to see phones out in bathrooms or locker rooms. And that's because sometimes students will take photographs or videos and they end up on social media, and that's never a good outcome. If your student needs to contact you in the course of the day, let's say they forgot to bring their Chromebook or they forgot what time the dentist appointment is after school, I ask them just to approach an adult, me or somebody else, or go to the office, ask if you can text or phone your parent, and we will almost always allow that to happen as long as we're there, right there with them. Lunch expectations, again, praised your students. They have been doing such a good job. We encourage them, or discourage them, I should say, from cutting in line. That becomes an issue. The lunch lines have gotten much, much faster. The first couple of days, students don't yet know their student ID number, but they've memorized them by now. And so those lines are going much more quickly. In the worst case scenario, students may only have, and I'm putting in air quotes, 10 to 15 minutes after they pass through the lines to get their lunch to be able to eat and socialize. But often the lines clear within 10 minutes and they have a lot of time to eat. If they come home and tell you that we ran out of food, that's just a misconception. I won't call it a lie, but we never, ever, ever run out of food. We might run out of their first choice. So we often run out of pizza. We serve Domino's Pizza, a healthy version, and that does sell out the most quickly. But as you can see in this picture, we have salads on a daily basis. We always have a hummus pack with vegetables. The other day we had really good chicken sandwiches. Sometimes there's pickup sticks, or anyway, point being, we don't run out of food. We just may run out of their first choice. Kids have been doing a really good job this year of picking up trash. I'm encouraging them to also pick up somebody else's trash. If they see a piece of trash blowing across the quad, just bend over and pick it up. We all need to take pride in our campus. I talked to them about the fact that during lunch, we need them to stay within the blue lines that are painted on the pavement. And the reason for that is if students are back in nooks and crannies, we can't see them to be able to make sure that they are safe, not being bullied, that nothing is kind of brewing. Exceptions to that within the blue lines rule are we have 2 right now supervised spaces that students can go outside of the main quad. On our blacktop, we have a supervisor out there every day, and we have basketballs and footballs and sometimes cornhole and jump ropes, and kids can go out there and burn off some steam and play in a safe manner. Sometimes we have 100 to 200 kids out there. It's great. I just wanted to remind them they have to finish their food before they go out there. And also the Learning Commons, which is the new name for the library. It's air conditioned, it's supervised, there's card games, there's puzzles. Students can go in there and use their Chromebooks and actually be on video games. It's okay. And so that's another place that they can go outside of the blue lines to be supervised in a safe environment. Also reminded students that we are a no gum campus, with the exception of a couple of students who may have an IEP or a 504 accommodation to be able to chew gum within the classroom. But otherwise, we are a no gum campus. Dress code is always an interesting topic to talk to students about. So I tell them there's a lot of words on this slide. I get that. But basically, that top part basically says that if there is something that it is illegal for a student to do, usually because of their age, such as drinking alcohol or using marijuana or vaping, those things are illegal for students who are in middle school to do, that they cannot wear clothing that advertises or glamorizes those things. So they cannot have a Budweiser bottle on their t-shirt. They cannot have a marijuana leaf on their bike helmet, on a sticker on their bike helmet. And so they get that. Also, we talked about there's some t-shirts right now that have profanity on them. And we said that's not appropriate for school. If your parent's okay with that, whatever, you can do that on the weekend, but we're not going to have profanity on our clothing at school. And then what we see mostly is honestly the things that are highlighted down at the bottom. So I talked to your students about the fact that they can wear short shorts, whatever, but their butt cheeks, and they giggle when I say that, have to be covered. The majority of their chest needs to be covered, and almost all of their stomach or abdomen needs to be covered. And so students, will walk by me and I can see them kind of covering up their stomach. And I'm like, don't worry about it. Just make sure that your shirt and your pants meet in the middle. If you can make them meet in the middle by pulling your pants up, usually they're rolled down, so unroll them. Or if your shirt is tucked in your bra in the back, untuck it so that your shirt can touch your shorts or your pants. Then we're cool. Or if you can go borrow a sweatshirt from a friend and wrap it around your waist, no problem. I would love for you to correct the issue and me not have to send you to the office or call home. We don't want to do all that. We want to handle it at school. So that is how the dress code works. I do want to let you know too, and I told your students that the dress code, we enforce it equally, no matter whether students identify as male or female or non-binary, or they have a curvy body or they have a slim body. It doesn't matter. The dress code is the same regardless. Okay, and then this is the part that we're legally required to communicate, that there are certain acts that we are legally required to suspend for. I told students, no matter if you are my favorite student on campus or you were just joking around with a friend, if you do certain things, we are legally required to suspend you and sometimes expel you. And I explained the difference between suspension and expulsion. I also explained how suspension is not a holiday. It's not a fun vacation time to be at home. Suspensions range anywhere from 1 day to 5 days, and teachers are not legally required to allow students to make up work that they missed when they are home suspended. So I said, imagine that you're suspended for 5 days and you earn zeros for all of the assignments that you missed during those 5 days. You're going to have a really hard time digging yourself out of that academic hole. And so we want to do everything we can to avoid suspensions. So I did review with them that fighting of any type is going to be a suspendable offense. Slap boxing, it does not matter if it is your friend, if they think it's funny, if you don't mean any harm. If you throw a punch, you are going to be suspended. I did talk to them too about the difference between fighting and defending oneself. I explained that if someone's coming after you to cause you physical harm and you put up a block, like I have my arms in front of me and I'm forming an X with them, if you are blocking someone from hurting you, that's self-defense. That's okay. If you end up on the ground somehow and you're pushing someone off of you to protect yourself, that's a defensive move. But if you throw a punch, that is an offensive move and you are going to be suspended for that. Threats to do harm, whether that is a threat that is verbalized face to face, whether it's in writing, whether it's something on social media where you're saying, I'm going to find you after school at so and so place, or my friend's going to find you after school, or anything along those lines. Those are threats to do bodily harm, and those are suspendable offenses. I showed them that picture of that tiny little pocket knife that's up in the top right hand corner. And I said, you may not think of that as a weapon, but students are not permitted, at least in the state of California, to have weapons of any type on campus, including that tiny 1-inch blade. I explained to your students that there are circumstances, and it happens once or twice a year, where a student may have been with you over the weekend and may have been hunting or fishing or camping or even doing airsoft guns or paintball guns or whatever. Under your supervision, you're okay with it, no problem. But where it becomes a problem is if they forget that either knife or that utility knife or that airsoft gun is in their backpack and they get to school in the morning. And I ask students to raise their hand and tell me how they think they can not be in trouble for having a weapon at school. And they knew pretty quickly that it's to come to the office and let us know. I said, absolutely. If you come and tell us, oops, I did not mean to bring this to school, we're going to call the parent. Parent's going to need to come pick it up. Nobody's in trouble. I can't give a weapon back to a student. As long as they haven't taken it out, shown it to people, brandished it, that becomes a whole nother thing. Okay, so we also talked about bullying and harassment. Clearly, those are suspendable offenses. Vandalism. Styluses. Oh my gosh, these styluses drive me crazy. Kids do steal styluses from each other and they sell them to other people. It is a hard crime for us to track down. However, if we do discover that someone has been stealing or selling styluses, it is a suspendable offense, and sometimes we might bring in law enforcement, especially if there's a whole black market thing going on. All right, let's move on. Progressive discipline, we talked about the fact that at our school, we don't tend to see those things that were on the previous slide very often at all, thank goodness. What we do see is typical teenage mistakes, roughhousing, can't keep their hands to themselves, that kind of stuff that you probably see at home too. And so what we will do is we will issue reminders and warnings. We're going to communicate with you a lot to let you know what your kid's doing, because it's going to work better when we can work in partnership. We do assign lunch detentions. Sometimes we have students pick up trash around campus. Again, we have Friday night school, which is really 2 hours after school on a Friday. But as things escalate, and if kids are not getting the message and they're not adjusting their behavior and they're continuing to shove their friends around at lunch on a continuous basis, which the reason why that's an issue to us is because more often than not, that devolves into a full-on fight. So we just need kids to keep their hands to themselves. Then it might turn into, over time, a suspension. So we just wanted them to be aware of how progressive discipline works. But we also told them that what we see more than anything else is kind of the drama, the relational drama between kids. And with girls, it's often exclusionary. So we're no longer going to pay attention to so-and-so, or we're going to leave her out of whatever we're doing. With boys, it tends to be more verbal and physical, but those are not hard and fast rules. Either way, when there is a negative interaction between kids or sometimes between a student and a teacher, we prefer to try and repair that relationship, to have the student or adult take responsibility for what they've done and try to repair the harm more than just with words and an apology, but an apology of action. We know from experience and from research that restorative practices are far more effective in many circumstances, not all circumstances, but in many circumstances than a suspension. So when we can use that as an alternative to punitive consequences that do not tend to make a difference in changing behavior, we're going to try that route. But both parties have to be willing to do that, and it cannot be a power imbalance. So if there's a true bullying situation going on, we are most likely not going to suggest restorative practices. Okay, we're getting close to the end, but we also talked to your students about the fact that we need their eyes and ears to keep the campus safe and to keep each other safe. We are not asking them to tattle on one another or narc on one another. I explained that tattling is when you're sharing something with the intent of getting someone in trouble. Telling is when you are trying to keep someone safe or get someone out of trouble. So if your students see someone on campus and they have a dangerous object on campus, or they have written something or drawn something that looks like it's threatening and might be a danger to other people, they need to tell a trusted adult, whether that's you as their family member or whether that's one of us. It can be anonymous, it can be an email, it can be, again, through a parent. We will do everything we can to keep their identity confidential so no one knows who told them. But we need students and parents to help us know, because you have more eyes and ears than we do. I also explained to students that at least once or twice a year, students probably help us save a life by letting us know what they see on social media. It is more often than not, when someone is feeling depressed and is thinking about harming themselves, they tend to express that first on social media. And we don't see that, and you probably won't see that. But if one of your children sees something like that and they let you know, even if they're not sure if the kid really means what they say, it's really important for them to tell you or tell us so we can get that student the support that they might need so that they don't cause harm to themselves. Ms. Porup, our health office technician, came in for a couple of minutes to introduce herself and talk about a couple of things. I'll just tell you here is students are not to carry any type of medication on them, including things like Advil that you may not think are that big of a deal, without having the proper form filed in the health office. Students at this age, they don't understand that sometimes something that could be completely harmless to them can be harmful to someone else. And they may give a friend an Advil or something else, and that child might have an adverse reaction to it. So we cannot have students having medications on their person and certainly not sharing them with someone else without us knowing about it in the health office. Ms. Porup also explained in such a cute way that, at least half of our students on campus are female, and that the kids are going to need a tampon or a pad, or they're going to have an accident. Happens on almost a daily basis, and that she is the person they can go to get help with that. If a student is feeling unwell in their class or in PE, they need to go to the health office to call you, not to go into the bathroom or call you or text you, but do that with the supervision of Ms. Porup so that we know what's going on, we can try and help, and that they're not getting in trouble for having their phone out. And then finally, I just reminded students that, most of what I just communicated doesn't apply to 99.9% of our students, that we have amazing kids at our school, and that if everyone treats each other with kindness, that we are all going to have a great year. So this saying, this statement is posted on our wall in our counseling office. And so I shared with your kids, that some kids are smarter than you, some kids have cooler clothes than you, some kids are better at sports than you. It doesn't matter. You have your thing too. Be the kid who can get along. Be the kid who is generous. Be the kid who is happy for other people. Be the kid who does the right thing. Be the nice kid. Thank you for sending your very nice kids to us. And if there's anything we can do to help your child feel safe and ready to learn at school, we would love to do that. Thanks for your partnership.